name is David Maidman, and I'm one of the producers of EVOTV, Eco Village Organizing, a new show dedicated to documenting sustainable activism in our communities and showcasing the people, groups, and organizations that are trying to make our communities more livable. As anyone who has recently gone to their grocery store has noticed, food prices are on the rise. Many say that this is due to our industrialized and globalized method of agricultural production that is so dependent on fossil fuels and so susceptible to increases in the cost of energy. They say that for every calorie we eat, 10 calories of oil is used in its production. Climate change and changing weather patterns are also starting to have an effect, and scientists say this is being mitigated by our burning of fossil fuels that puts increasing amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. So what can we do about it? Many people are saying that we have to move to a more localized method of growing our food. But how do we accomplish this in a dense urban environment like Metro Vancouver? Today I'm being joined by three people who are working on solutions to that very problem. Arzeena Hamir is an agriologist and works as coordinator for the Richmond Food Security Society, a nonprofit group that promotes local food production and consumption. She earned her bachelor's degree in crop science from the University of Guelph and her master's degree in sustainable agriculture from the University of London, England. Arzeena worked for abroad for many years as a CUSO volunteer in Thailand and as a researcher in Jamaica, India, and Bangladesh. She was the staff agriologist for West Coast Seeds in the late 90s and ran her own seed company, Terra Viva Organics. Arzeena also sits on the board of the Richmond Fruit Tree Sharing Project, the Richmond Schoolyard Society, and the BC Food Systems Network, in conjunction with Kwantlen University. Arzeena helped to launch the Richmond Farm School and teaches market crop production there. Next to her is David Tracey. He is a writer and designer specializing in community ecology. His design firm, EcoUrbanist, provides environmental site design and consultation to private, community-based, and government clients. His reports for media around the world focus on the connections between politics, culture, and the environment. He is the author of the recently published Urban Agriculture Ideas and Designs for the New Food Revolution. He has also written Guerrilla Gardening, a manifesto, and the comedy The Miracle Tree. A certified arborist, he is the executive director of Tree City, a nonprofit group helping people and trees grow together. Next to him is Tricia Sedgwick. She is a registered holistic nutritionist with a background in environmental studies. In 2007, she spearheaded The World in the Garden, an urban agriculture product designed to enable youth and community to experience the cultural, nutritional, and environmental benefits of local organic food systems and from seed to table. Her global vision is to build egg gardens and connect agriculture around the world through food. Uniting thread. Tricia is also the founder of Seeds of Plenty, the sprouted cookie company, which offers organic artisan cookies, treats, and ethical gift baskets. Seeds of Plenty is built on an ethical business practices and a fundraising model that gives back to the world in a garden. Her website is www.seedsofplenty.com and theworldinthegarden.com. So, Arzeena, you're involved in Richmond, which at one time was the main agricultural area here in Vancouver. What is the state of the farmland in Metro Vancouver and Richmond? Do we have enough farmland to support ourselves, or how is the state of our farmlands?
Well, I guess the way that I could encapsulate it all is if we didn't have the ALR, Richmond would have paved over all of its farmland a long, long time ago. But thankfully, we still have approximately 3,000 acres of agricultural land in Richmond. It's primarily taken up through the production of cranberries and blueberries. We have very few farms left that are actually growing vegetables for people to consume. So we have the land. Lately, we've had a lot of speculators buying farmland in Richmond, which has really driven the price of farmland up. I think we probably set the record in the Lower Mainland. On average, farmland is selling for about $1 million an acre if you're buying a small parcel. So that's obviously out of reach for any kind of farmer. People are buying that land and either building large houses, mansion type houses on it, and sort of building their country estate, or they're buying that land and holding on to it with the hopes that it will eventually be taken out of the ALR.
And for our viewers that don't know, maybe you could explain what the ALR is?
The ALR stands for the Agricultural Land Reserve, and it's a system that was set up in 1973 by then the NDP government to protect farmland so that it wouldn't be paved over by developers and by City Council allowing developers to develop on farmland. So in that way, it has really helped to protect a very large swath of land in British Columbia. And BC is one of the few provinces in Canada that has something in place like that. So it allows land to be protected. The issue is that it still doesn't ensure that the land is farmed and that farming is an enterprise that is profitable. That's where we're seeing issues happening in Richmond, just the profitability of farming with the rising land costs.
I see. And David, the City of Vancouver is promoting a pattern of development there called eco-density, where they want to have more and more people living in the urban environment in Vancouver. And how do they plan to feed all these people that will be living in the City of Vancouver in the future? I mean, how can you see any way that it can be done?
Well, eco-density is a phrase we don't hear a whole lot nowadays. It was popular 3 or 4 years ago when Sam Sullivan was still the mayor, and he brought it in as a way to more ecologically plan the city. And it wasn't a bad idea. It isn't a bad idea. What it says is that density is a good way to live on the earth. So instead of all the single family dwellings we have in our downtown areas, put more people on that same amount of land, and then you can bring in more services. Transportation makes more sense. You don't have to walk or drive to places to get around. So it was really a good idea. The trouble was, it was Sam Sullivan who brought it in, who had a whole lot of other baggage in his lap, and he also tried to coin the term or trademark the term, and people got kind of creeped out at that. So it sort of fell out of favor in that sense. But the idea itself was a good one. So as to whether we in the city can grow our own food, I think was the question.
Yeah.
Can we feed ourselves, I think? That's somewhat dubious. It's doubtful. There's too many people in cities to really think we're ever going to feed ourselves as cities. Yeah. But we can grow a whole lot more of our own food. Urban agriculture has been around since urban and agriculture have been around. They kind of grew up together about 10,000 years ago when we first started farming. So it's not an unusual or new thing. We do know how to do it. City residents can grow food and grow a lot more. It's just in the last generation or two, when we've moved largely off the farm into the cities, that we've lost those basic skills. So there's a lot of people in cities now trying to get those back, trying to encourage more people to grow food, even if it's on a small scale, even if it's on a balcony or even a windowsill on the smallest scale. And to me, what that does is it brings them into an alternative food system to the globalized food system based on industrial agriculture that we've been riding for the last century, and we know is not working. Not working for the planet, with 1.2 billion people going without enough food, another 1 billion eating the wrong kinds of food and eating themselves to an early death. And just not working. So as an alternative to that, if we can get more people in the cities growing more food, tie them into the agriculture system that's based more around local, resilient communities, then we can start to have a real partnership between city residents and the farmers around them and in rural areas, and really start to work together on this thing to combat the giant corporations that want to take over the global food system and do it for their own profit rather than for people.
And I think recent studies have even shown that small-scale farming on a per-acre basis is much more productive than industrialized agriculture.
Yeah, this is one of the things that really bugs me, because I still see this in the mainstream media. They'll say, oh, you have to go into these areas where these subsistence farmers are, these small-scale farmers are, and they're so inefficient. And if only we can go in with a corporation and put in a real farm there, we can increase our efficiencies and do much better and feed more people. Almost as if those people who have been living for thousands of years on this system are stupid, or they don't get it. They don't understand what a real farm is. And we've seen that the real farm, in their view, the global corporate food system view, is unecological. It's not good for the community. It's good for profits, but not really for the local people who are sometimes growing the food for hire, sometimes turfed off the farm altogether, because the whole point of the global food system that way is to get people out of growing food and have it done by a few. So there's no way it can work in the long run, and that's now being recognized by scientists. The latest one was a UN-sponsored study of 500 scientists around the world to look at what is the food system that's going to work for the future. And it was an unbiased study in that it was scientifically run, and the view that came out of them was the only way to do it is with small-scale farmers, supporting them at the community level so they can grow and feed themselves.
Tricia, this sounds very much like the vision of your world in the garden, isn't it?
Yeah, it's similar. I think the part about community, and one of the main drives for me is that we're losing community and we're losing our cultural connection to food. If you look back into any traditions, they had a cultural connection to their food. It was part of celebrations. The harvest was a part of the celebration, and people were healthy because they were eating off the land. So I think it's, definitely a part of it, of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And what sort of things can we do to try to reconnect with food and reconnect to this celebration? Do you have any programs going on right now that are trying to get this reconnection going on?
Well, at our site at 57th and East Boulevard in Vancouver, we do a lot of community outreach, and we do workshops, and we're having a harvest celebration in the fall. So we have ongoing events to engage the community and show them that growing food in urban spaces is possible, and that it also can be productive, and we sell to market. So even when we're at the market, we're educating people on what we're doing, that we're actually growing food within the city in a relatively small space. It's 5,400 square feet. So the other thing that I do on a regular basis, we have a garden at Vancouver Montessori School, and I work with a couple of different schools where we do the seed to table process. So they start by planting their seeds, and they go through the whole process of taking care of their plants and weeding and maintaining the garden, and then at the end of the year we have a harvest celebration. So they pick what it was. Usually we do salad mixes and different things, and they learn how to harvest and eat their food. And so they're eating things like kale and spinach and collards and food they would probably not otherwise hear of. I mean, it's a big learning experience for the parents as well as the children. So.
Great. So given the challenge we've already discussed, what other factors do we face in terms of trying to develop a sustainable type of agriculture, and how do you see the greatest challenges to our global food supply?
I think we need more farmers, probably. It's on both sides, really. There's the supply side, right? We need more people who are skilled in growing food in the way that David mentioned. Efficient, using more human-powered, less reliance on fossil fuels. But that takes a lot of skill, and for a generation we've kind of lost that skill, and I think a lot of young people are really having to catch up. I see a lot of emerging demand in interest in learning how to farm this way, but I don't think we're even close to meeting the demand currently. And then, to get consumers to change their shopping habits, from eating seasonally, what's in season, canning and preserving what they do have when it's in season, eating that in the wintertime, that's a huge cultural change that we've really gone away from, really from the 1950s onward. You can basically buy whatever food you want at any time of the year, and to be conscious of where that food comes from is going to take some time in education.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also really back to what you're saying, is that there's not a lot of value put on good, healthy food. And people, even at farmers market, see the prices and they're like, well, I don't want to pay that much for a bunch of spinach, or not understanding what the real value or what food is really worth. I mean, if you work one day on a farm, that's all you need to do to realize like how much time and effort and energy farmers are putting in. And on an hourly rate, they're not making very much money at all, even if they're selling their organic spinach for a lot more than what you would see in the Safeway shelf.
Yeah, I agree with that. The price of food, I think, is an odd one. But I'm the same way. I go to the farmer's market and I'm not going to pay $4 for beets.
But you grow your own.
Well, that's one incentive for me to go and buy a $2 package of seeds and grow some of my own beets.
Right.
But I understand the shock. It is a lot because it's kind of different than what we're used to. And part of the problem, I think, is the price of food doesn't really reflect the price of food. So we've been letting the big corporations produce this cheap food for us, and we've been gorging on it. It's been great. We can get, mangoes in February. We don't give it much thought because it's not very expensive. We pay, between 10 and 15% of our normal budget, our middle class, Western society budget on food, whereas in some parts of the world, they'll pay 50 to 80% of their budget on food. So it's a huge part of their lives, a little small part of our lives economically. But when we do that, we're not realizing that there's actually a higher price to that food. It's subsidized. We are subsidizing it through our governments, through subsidies in fuels and different sort of government programs to the large industrial farms that aren't being supported to the small local organic farms. So we're all paying for that cheaper price of food. We're also paying for it in environmental ways. They are polluting the environment, they're putting nitrogen into the ocean, and now there's huge dead zones in the ocean, apparently, where things won't even grow. That's all for the runoff of the chemicals from the farms that, again, we're all paying for. Because when we lose a big part of our ocean, that's ours, and there's a cost to that. Somebody's eventually going to have to clean it up. It's going to be my kids or my kids' kids. And that's not reflected in the price of that mango. So it's kind of a false economy we're living in right now. And the ones reaping from it are the profiteers who are doing really well. You might say we're doing okay too because it's not costing us that much to do it. But if you really think about it, it is costing us that much. The bill just hasn't come in yet.
Yeah, and we're also paying for it in our health, definitely. Like health-wise, we're eating these box packaged, genetically modified, high fructose corn syrup foods, and in the long run we're paying for it in our quality of life, and we're seeing it that goes through our tax money in the Canadian medical system that we're paying through our teeth really at the end of the day. And if we're not paying, if people aren't necessarily, if they don't, in the States where they don't have maybe the medical to cover it, then they're living a poor quality life. And on a day-to-day basis they don't have the energy, but the end of their life isn't well spent either.
So what steps are three levels of government doing in terms of helping to mitigate some of these problems that you've talked about? We have a federal Department of Agriculture, we have a provincial Department of Agriculture, and municipal governments have a big effect on this in terms that they are the ones that really make all these land use decisions. So here in the Lower Mainland, Metro Vancouver, could you give us any specific specifics of what our governments are doing to help us get access to healthy food?
I think it really varies. I mean, Gregor Robertson rode his bike to the garden to celebrate its opening, so that's pretty good.
But I think at the provincial and federal level, you'll probably hear a resounding silence of support, because federally, our Ministry of Agriculture is not interested in local food. They're interested in export and commodities and biofuels. That's where our taxpayer dollars are going, to subsidize those types of products. And if you've ever even applied or tried to apply for government funding to support any kind of ecological agriculture at the local level, as soon as they see those keywords, local, ecological, sustainable, you get a big red X on your grant proposal. So federally currently there's very little. Provincially, I would probably say the same. There's not, the provincial government really, Ministry of Agriculture's budget has been cut so much. I mean, they barely have enough money to pay staff, so I can't see very much happening at that level. I think the sentiment is there. They would like to support local farmers, but again, funding has not gone to the Ministry of Agriculture. But I think you were right. At the municipal level is where you're seeing the most interaction between growers, urban farmers, and politics. It's really at the municipal level.
But actually, there's some cases where some municipalities are outright trying to ban farming. I think we were discussing earlier, Arzeena, the Lanceville City Council. Could you explain what's happening over there?
Well, you just got to scratch your head sometimes. So Lanceville is located just outside of Nanaimo. And currently there is a couple there, Dirk Becker and his partner. They have been farming a 2.5-acre farm for a number of years. And they actually converted what was a gravel pit into a lush urban farm. Now, the issue has come up that their neighbor didn't like what they were doing. And because they live in an area that's zoned residential, even though the lots are 2.5 acres, under the current bylaws in Lanceville, commercial farming is not allowed in a residential zone. And so they've been given not only a cease and desist order, but I think Dirk is facing 6 months in jail because he refuses to stop farming. Yeah.
How would you see this issue in terms of municipalities and urban agriculture, David?
Yeah, it's madness, isn't it? The Lanceville case. And there's another case, I think it's in the States, where a woman is looking at going to jail for growing food on her front lawn instead of growing a crop grass, the largest crop in North America, which is turf lawn. Just madness. So to me, that strikes me as a reason why we need better legislation, not just at the municipal level, but at the provincial and the federal level. And there's a move going on right now, the BC Food Systems Network. That's this really great organization that I know Arzeena's on, Tricia's on, probably, I don't know if you're on this year, but current, anyway, we've all been part of it at times. It's a network of all the different groups that are doing work around the food system in BC. They're now looking at coming up with a provincial policy that will supersede a lot of the municipal policies, which may be bad. The trouble with the municipal ones is you get your team in there, the good guys, and they start passing these really great laws with what limited power they have, usually over zoning, so they can say, yes, you can grow food. But in Vancouver, even now, there's a great outburst of energy of people growing food, and they're selling at markets. It's fantastic to see. You can feel like the future is going to be okay, and our kids are going to grow up somewhere decent, but it's actually not on the books. They're all kind of operating in this gray area, and another government that happened to come in could change that overnight. So I think what we need is provincial legislation that says something like, you are allowed to grow your own food. You are allowed to sell your own food to your neighbors. Your neighbors are allowed to buy food that you've grown on your lawn. That no local government can impose their own ideas on what your grass should be, what lawn should be. And if you can do that at the provincial level, that makes it much easier for those local governments to resist the pressures, because that's what happens. Exactly. That's why the ALR was such a great legislation. It gave the province, at one fell swoop, the ability to say, no, we need farmland for our future. Our kids are going to have to eat here too. So you can't just pave over it, even if you have a lot of money and you come in and it's a great deal and the local government is going to get some great benefits from it because the developers loaded and they're paying for it. They was saying, no, we're taking the broad view of this, the big view. And I think that's what we need now for the farming. And if anyone's interested, they could contact the BC Food Systems Network. I think it's fooddemocracy.org is the website. Go there and check it out. And if you've got input in how to help get this policy going, what exactly it should be, definitely give them a shout and see how you can be a part of it.
On the coast, I spy my true love coming my way. Down along the cove, I spy my true love coming my way. She said, Lord have mercy, honey. Sure is good to see you coming today. Down along the cove, we walk together hand in hand. walk together hand in hand. Everybody watching us go by knows we're in love. Yes, they understand. Down along the coast, I spot my little bundle of joy. Down along the coast, I spot my little bundle of joy. She said, Lord, have mercy, honey. So glad that you're my boy. Walk together hand in hand. Down along the coast, we walk together hand in hand. Everybody watching us go by knows we love, yes, understand. By my little bundle of joy. Down along the coast, I spot my little